Good morning. Carolyn Cowan here. Welcome, Literate Nation boot campers, to Twitter Power 101, leverage Twitter and other social media to achieve your goals. A little about my context for doing this presentation. I'm the social media editor and strategist for the International Dyslexia Association's e-letter, The Examiner, and I'm also on the board of directors of Literate Nation, and in that capacity, I serve as its vice president of online innovation, executive editor, and editor of its e-magazine, Catalyst. I've been tasked with providing a snapshot of how to move the message in the 21st century. And since we only have about 45 minutes or so and a lot of ground to cover, I'm going to jump right in. One quick note. I'm recording this at home with the threat of the usual interruptions all around, barking dogs, phone calls, or the mailman coming to the door. In other words, in the midst of life's usual chaos. So we'll just have to run with it if something interesting happens. If you aren't a digital native, and I can't see you all, but I'm just guessing that digital natives are in the minority at the boot camp. If you aren't a digital native, I suspect that these three statements probably apply to you. One, technology does not come easily, though it's getting better, I'm sure. Two, you're not a social media early adopter, though you may have an account or two by now. And three, technology and digital media are part of your life, but you still tend to prefer print and paper for many things. Now, if none of these statements apply to you, you probably do have a lot of social media expertise, which I hope you will share with the rest of your colleagues. If these three statements mostly do apply to you, and I suspect they apply to most of us, fear not, that is why we're here. I have another question for you to consider. When you first heard about Twitter, did you think it was crazy? I mean, what the heck can you do with 140 characters? Well, as it turns out, quite a lot. A final question for you to think about. Are these two statements true about you? You are at this boot camp because you care about SEEDS kids. And two, you work to improve the teaching learning landscape, especially for SEEDS kids. If either or both of the last two questions are true, and of course I assume they are, then I think you will want to learn more about social media as a powerful means to achieve your ends. Now, full disclosure, just a few years ago, I knew almost zilch about social media. Truth be told, I'm fairly tech-phobic. Ask anyone who knows me. Not long ago, however, I embarked on a quest to explore social media, and what I learned persuaded me that anyone seeking to improve the teaching learning landscape should initiate his or her own quest to understand and leverage the power of social media. And in this talk, I hope to inspire you to do exactly that. Now, I may be a bit tech challenged, but I did have one big advantage in embarking on my quest to explore social media. I happen to live under the same roof with an early adopter new media guy. And he not only encouraged me to leverage new media tools and strategies to advance my mission, he also scaffolded my learning a bit, and here's how he did it. First, a little background. Despite being married to this new media expert and early adopter type, I was slow to recognize the power of social media, even as it began invading our household, which was even before friend became a verb. Over time, I did succumb to environmental pressure. I acquired a Facebook page, I joined LinkedIn, I started a Twitter account, and I even posted a few presentations on SlideShare. And I would trot out these social media credentials when feeling the need to demonstrate that I wasn't totally helpless or hopeless. But truth be told, I wasn't very active on those platforms. For the most part, I was mystified. Why is every news anchor on the planet suddenly talking about hashtags? Or I was skeptical. How can anyone say anything significant in 140 characters? I was way busy. Who has time to play around with social media? And I was fearful. Who knows what evil lurks beneath the benign looking surface of social media's waters? And then I received an unlikely holiday gift from that guy with whom I share my life. A bunch of books on social media. Imagine my enthusiasm. He also made a point of challenging me with two questions, somewhat along these lines. First, as a mission-driven social entrepreneur and educator, isn't it time to learn how to leverage social media tools to achieve your goals? And second, how can you be so concerned with print literacy and ignore new media literacy and the imperative to prepare children to live in a world that demands new media competence? Less than thrilled, I began reading and trying some of the strategies in the books. I started with LinkedIn because it seemed more professional and, well, more grown up than Facebook, and moved on to explore SlideShare and Twitter more deeply. Now, to my surprise, I began to like dabbling in social media and found myself venturing into its deeper waters. The small experiments that I conducted began producing results, especially on Twitter. I was inspired. But I was a closet tweeter. Most of my esteemed colleagues were not, heaven forbid, tweeting, and I was not quite ready to confess that I had crossed over. Meanwhile, building on success and with scaffolding and support from my family and books, my learning accelerated. I witnessed the power of social media's tools and strategies in arenas where I had thought they had just no relevance. Finally, tentatively, I emerged from the closet to share this power with colleagues. And actually, I was pushed out of the closet by Cynthia Coletti-Hahn, who inveigled me into doing a 5-minute presentation on social media at a panel at the 2011 conference of the International Dyslexia Association. Right, you can do that in 5 minutes. Cynthia can be persuasive. So it's my turn now to pay it forward, to help others journey down this social media road, and believe me, I am still journeying. But since there's nothing more irritating than the sanctimony of the newly converted, I promise to temper my enthusiasm. You'll hear no claims from me that social media will bring world peace, stop climate change, or even solve the challenges we face in education. And hazards do indeed lurk in social media's waters. I will, however, try to persuade you to test these waters and to learn to swim in them safely and with an increasing degree of competence. My goal, in short, is to inspire and empower you to leverage social media to advance your cause and enhance your work. If I'm successful, I hope you will pay it forward and inspire and empower your colleagues. We'll focus mostly on Twitter to do this, because partly that's the one I know the best, and partly because it's the least complicated, I think. But the larger principles I discuss here today apply to all social media. And if you already use these tools and strategies, I hope to support and encourage further, deeper exploration and encourage you to inspire and support your colleagues. Now, since we only have 45 minutes or so, I will zip through quite a bit of content to help you see the power of social media. For me, understanding that power and seeing how I could use social media's tools and strategies to enhance my work was an epiphany, and the starting gun that propelled me forward. This presentation, therefore, targets social media's why more than its how-to for two reasons. First, we don't have time for much more. And second, and much more importantly, I think most of us need to see good reasons before investing time in new directions or in new priorities. But if you're looking for the nuts and bolts, I do have a chapter in Blueprint for a Literate Nation called Leverage Social Media to Drive Change, which has much more detail. And if you don't already have this book, you can join Literate Nation for free and get this chapter as a complimentary download. And you can get both the book and the complimentary chapter at literatenation.org. For more nuts and bolts, you can also go to my SlideShare page where I've posted almost 20 presentations, several of which relate to social media, especially Twitter. And I'll try to post this presentation there shortly too. That address is slideshare.net/Carolyn D. Cowan. slideshare.net/Carolyn D. Cowan. And for even more nuts and bolts, I think my Scoop It page is probably the best resource for how to use Twitter and other social media. And I've curated a lot of content there for my upcoming presentation for IDA. And this content includes several how-to guides that walk through startup steps, as well as information using social media at much more advanced levels. And that address is scoop.it//IDA-conference-social-media-readings. And I imagine I went too quickly for you to catch all those addresses. So here they are again, the three of them. And I will put this slide up again at the end of this presentation too. So now for the next 20 minutes or so, we'll focus more specifically on the why of social media, especially Twitter, and please forgive me for going quickly. If it starts to feel like a lot to digest, remember I've provided ways to dig into this material more deeply on your own. So for now, just sit back and allow this content and concepts to wash over you and to gently bathe your brain. Some of this you will know, maybe some of this you don't know. And here we go. So besides for entertaining and socializing, why social media? How can it help you in your work, goals, and mission? These 4 reasons might interest you. 1. To enhance search engine optimization, SEO. And what is that? Strategies for optimizing the chances for getting found by search engines such as Google, and we'll discuss this more fully later in this talk. We'll put enhancing SEO under the category of web strategy. 2, to listen and broadcast. And we'll put this under the category of monitoring or pulse taking and messaging. 3, to build PLNs and ignite social action. PLN stands for Personal or Professional Learning Network, which we'll also discuss more fully later in this presentation. And we'll put PLNs and igniting social action under the category of networking and mobilizing. 4, to enrich and engage learning and to differentiate teaching. And we'll put this under the category of pedagogy. Now, since time is short today, this is the one category, I'm sorry to say, we won't spend much time on. So 4 good reasons. Web strategy, monitoring and messaging, networking and mobilizing, and pedagogy. 4 important strategic categories if your goal is to change the teaching learning landscape for SEEDS kids. These are 4 important strategic categories that can be leveraged to create change and as tools for achieving your mission. But let's drill down and get more specific. How can social media help you spark and power change? Twitter is a very powerful microblogging platform, launched as recently as 2006. Since time is tight, we'll focus on Twitter in the context of three of these four categories: web strategy, monitoring and messaging, and networking and mobilizing. Twitter does have interesting applications for pedagogy, but I think the other categories are more germane to the bootcamp agenda anyway. But if you do want to explore Twitter as a pedagogy tool, you might start by checking out some of the content I've curated on that topic on the Scoop It page that I mentioned earlier, and that URL will come back on a final slide at the end of this presentation. Okay, web strategy, our first category. How does Twitter advance web strategy? Think of Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and other popular sites as outposts for your website or blog, or for that matter, anybody's website or blog. Twitter is like a billboard on steroids. A billboard driving traffic to your site. But how do you stand out in all the noise about the likes of Lady Gaga or Kim Kardashian? The answer? Hashtags, those little crosshash marks. A hashtag preceding words in your Twitter message enables people to search for messages and conversation about your topics. Hashtags function something like zip codes. They allow you to target your messaging to people in your topical neighborhoods. Hashtag EdChat, CPChat, EdTech are some popular hashtags in education. Here's some more popular hashtags in education: SpedChat, EdReform, and EdSchools. Hashtag LDChat is not on this slide only because this slide's kind of old, I think, now. But LDChat is definitely worthy of mention. I recommend it highly. You can find links to lists of other education hashtags on that same Scoop It page. Now, an obscure hashtag like hashtag grandparent lessons might not be very strategic, unless your goal is to reach this guy. On the other hand, tweets in high traffic hashtags can get lost. You want to use hashtags strategically to reach specific audiences, and your message, intended audience, and goals should inform your use of hashtags. For example, this is a tweet we used a while back to promote IDA's Multisensory Research Competitive Grant Program. We used hashtags neuroscience, grants, dyslexia, and reading, and we attracted more proposals than ever before, and they were international. But you also want to be careful not to overdo hashtags. More and more I hear cautions about hashtag overkill. This one with 4 might be a bit much, though it did produce results. The point is, use hashtags strategically and judiciously. So let's visit a hashtag neighborhood, and my apologies for the tiny font. If you enter hashtag dyslexia in your Twitter search field, which arrow number 1 points to, you get pages of results related to dyslexia that update as new tweets get posted. Here we have a tweet from Dyslexia the Movie about an interview with Stuart Hudson, formerly of the Tremaine Foundation. They used hashtag dyslexia, look at arrow number 2. So their tweet appears in this hashtag neighborhood. They also provide a link to the video, which you actually could view right here. We can see that this hashtag does get pretty decent traffic. In the time that it took me to do this screen grab from my slide, 14 new dyslexia tweets got posted, which arrow number 3 points to. Here's the same dyslexia hashtag neighborhood on another visit, and you may know some of these people. We have a tweet about assistive technology from Jamie Martin being retweeted by Ben Powers, which means Ben is sharing it with all of his followers. We also have a tweet from Dorothy Bishop, a professor of developmental psychology, who is one of the few academics who actively blogs and tweets. She has over 15,000 followers, and if you're into neuroscience and research, you definitely will want to follow her. She's just fantastic. And by the way, the little green arrow at the top right of that tweet means it was retweeted by me. We also have a tweet from the Yale Center for Dyslexia and Creativity about Dyslexia Awareness Month. Yale has over 3,000 followers, and Yale's tweet is being retweeted by Decoding Dyslexia. So that gives you a taste of the activity in the hashtag dyslexia neighborhood. And by the way, there's another slide at the end of this presentation that has all the Twitter addresses of everyone I mention in this talk today, in case you want to follow them. Here's the hashtag for our boot camp. If you haven't found your way to LNBC 14, please check it out. I think you'll enjoy conversing and networking with colleagues who are participating in this event, and it will extend the impact of the boot camp, and it's a great way to learn how a hashtag works. In addition to your hashtag neighborhoods, your audience includes your followers. For example, this is my page from about a year ago. Now the page design has changed somewhat, and I'm now closing in on 18,000 followers. I mean 1,800. Oh, how I wish, 18,000. But this still is close enough to illustrate my point. The tweets that you see here from me, which both happen to be retweets, one from Dorothy Bishop and another from Research ILD, went to the Twitter feeds of my then 1,400 followers. SEO, back to SEO. So in addition to hashtags and followers, your audience includes those who might discover you via search engines. This is a Google search I did on myself a while back, and notice how my social media activities showed up at the top of the page. So an entire industry has grown up around the creation and use of sophisticated SEO tactics, but all you need to know is that through the simple act of tweeting, you can enhance SEO and page ranking, especially if you consistently and strategically use keywords and phrases that summarize or relate to your cause. Now, I do have a caveat. This is true now. SEO dynamics are pretty fluid. So, as Deckers and Lacey of Branding Yourself say, Twitter allows instantaneous sharing of your blog or website content, the opportunity to publish to a readership of millions. And by the way, yes, this is one of the books I received as a holiday gift. This potential millions comes from hashtags, followers, and SEO. So Twitter is a potent web strategy, a way to build and engage with audience and drive traffic to sites. Our next category is monitoring and messaging. How does Twitter promote monitoring and messaging? Your Twitter feed is a highly effective way to stay abreast of breaking news in specific content areas. For example, say you're interested in testing policy. As you follow folks with similar interests, their tweets show up in your Twitter feed. And they provide links to breaking news on testing, such as a Huffington Post article or a New York Daily News article or a New York Times article. From your Twitter feed, you could get links to 3 articles with potentially important information. But that's only half of it. Twitter also is a broadcasting tool. Now, broadcasting is one thing, and I have to stop for a second, I promise. No pun was intended here. I only noticed the pun in this slide after I created it, but I kind of like it. So anyway, broadcasting is one thing. Attracting listeners or followers is another. How do you get Twitter followers? There are many strategies to build your number of followers, but learning the art of a good tweet is most important. And what makes a good tweet? Effective tweets post informative links, they engage, interact, and build relationships, and they promote your cause, all in 140 characters or less. And these days, less definitely is more. Research shows that the shorter tweets are getting more clicks. Here are some examples of tweets from me trying to hit those three objectives. Tweet number 1, Marianne Wolf, what happens to deep reading in digital era? It includes a link to an in-depth article from Marianne on that topic. It also includes hashtags dyslexia, e-learning, neuroscience, reading, and edtech. And probably today I would use fewer hashtags. Tweet number 2, at Diane Ravitch, funny. Wonder how rules of written discourse debate are changing for good, bad. You've mastered art, science of tweetbait. And for a while there, she and I actually exchanged a tweet or two. But that was before she found out what I really thought, I think. By the way, she now has 97,000 followers. Tweet number 3, dyslexia with 20/20 vision. Sherman and Cowan, 7 articles look into the future. This includes a link to the articles and hashtags, neuroscience, reading, and literacy. And yes, this is a shameless promotion of an IDA Perspectives issue that Gordon and I co-edited. So a good tweet functions like a headline, drawing in the reader and then following up with good content. A good tweet engages or interacts, promotes your cause, or posts links to good content. And by the way, there are cool things like link shorteners that take lengthy URL addresses and shorten them so they don't eat up your 140 characters. And if you're just starting out and don't know about link shorteners, Google bit.ly, the power of the link, and that will get you started. So as Deckers and Lacey say, the more content-rich your tweets, the more people will read. Content comes from linking to your blog, website, and other news sources, and by engaging in conversation. Here are some Twitter don'ts. Don't promote yourself too much. It's tedious, and people will stop sharing your stuff. Don't overdo quotes. Some people like them. I think they're boring. Why waste valuable messaging opportunities repeating quotes anyone can find in a good quote book? Don't lose track of time. 15 to 30 minutes per day, that's really just plenty. And don't forget that tweets are public. They last forever. Here are some Twitter do's. Do be goal-oriented and relevant. Do be active. 5 to 20 tweets per day is pretty active. If you are just starting out, 1 to 5 is plenty ambitious. Do embrace giver's gain. Deckers and Lacey suggest 1 self-serving tweet for every 9 about others or about content in the field. Deckers and Lacey also say, when it comes to Twitter, you're expected to share others' content more than your own. They're more likely to share yours in return. Here's some examples of retweeting and Twitter etiquette. Miguel Escote has retweeted my dyslexia with 20/20 vision tweet. He's really active. He has 32,000 followers, and he's another neuroscience guy. Now, at the time, I had only 1,400 followers, but with his retweet to his 32,000 followers, my tweet potentially was seen by well over 33,000 sets of eyeballs. But that doesn't mean they saw it in their Twitter feeds or clicked on the link, but it does mean more people probably read this content than in its initial print readership of about 2,000. In the second tweet, I returned the favor and retweeted one of Miguel's tweets, and then we thanked each other, which is pretty standard Twitter etiquette, though I've noticed that these days people seem to be thanking with a little favorite, a star that you can affix to someone's tweet, or with just another retweet. So, all of this brings us to a most important point. According to a TechCrunch article in 2011, tens of millions of links are shared daily on Twitter, with 100 million active users sending 230 million tweets per day. Twitter is driving a good amount of sharing activity. Today, it's even higher. 230 million active users are sending 400 million tweets per day. And actually, that slides from 2013, so we know these numbers are even higher now. In other words, Twitter's linking and sharing culture is a powerful asset for igniting change. Borrowing from Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point, mavens or databanks, connectors or social glue, and salesmen, persuaders, all populate Twitter, a medium that further empowers them to do what they already do well. So, Twitter helps you enlist the talents of mavens, connectors, and salesmen to convey your messages. A final point about Twitter's broadcasting power. You have more power over your messaging and press. You don't need to rely so much on traditional press to tell your story. You can tell it yourself with accuracy and passion. And now we tackle our third category, networking and mobilizing, and this will be our fourth category for this talk. Our final category, for this talk. How does Twitter promote networking? Twitter helps build personal or professional learning networks, PLNs, and mobilize community action. What is a PLN? Again, professional or personal learning networks. Now, the all-knowing Wikipedia says PLNs are becoming prevalent in education and are rapidly being adopted as centers for dissemination or field-related information. A key concept of a PLN is that they are learner-centered. Learners create connections and develop networks that contribute to their professional development. If you're familiar with SpellTalk, that's a great example of an online PLN. This one is a listserv rather than a microblogging platform like Twitter, but the idea is the same. And by the way, if you Google SpellTalk, you'll find that listserv. And I really recommend it. It's really provocative, very informative, daily dialogue among thought leaders in our field. I tend to just lurk there, but I've learned a lot and have met some really amazing people. Anyway, we probably can anticipate that PLNs driven by social media will play an expanding role in 21st century teacher preparation, professional development, and consensus building. Now, most literacy leaders and seeds champions of the evidence-based persuasion, that includes me, will feel some discomfort with the learner-centric concept at the heart of PLNs, and will worry about leaving too much responsibility for professional learning in the hands of those who, frankly, may not know enough to know what they do not know, never mind how to acquire the deep knowledge they need. A concern? Oh, absolutely. But imagine the synergistic power in a skillfully executed effort to organize PLNs for literacy educators in teacher preparation and professional development programs that embody, for example, the tenets of IDA's knowledge and practice standards for teachers of reading. Or imagine leveraging PLNs to organize a grassroots campaign to raise public awareness about the knowledge base required for skilled reading instruction. Or imagine coordinating PLNs nationwide to share effective strategies and tools for pushing for state literacy laws, tools like Literate Nation's Blueprint for a Literate Nation. Now, PLNs are not new. Throughout human history, formal and informal professional and grassroots networks have always shared knowledge and information to advance social goals. Here's what is new. Social media platforms like Twitter expand the power and reach of these learning networks profoundly. Social media also has the power to ignite social action for good and bad. For good and bad. Twitter is thought to have played a role in the UK's civil unrest in the spring of 2011. Twitter was used to organize protests in Egypt, Tunisia, and Iran. Twitter helped launch the Occupy movement. Boston police tweeted the news of the arrest of the Boston Marathon bombing suspect. Twitter was used to communicate during earthquakes in California and is being studied as a way to understand epidemics and how they spread. So all of that's really a pretty darn big impact for a social media platform launched as recently as 2006. In our field, Twitter's power to galvanize and coordinate social action also has been leveraged in education reform battles. During the summer of 2011, a grassroots effort called Save Our Schools, SOS, organized a march in Washington, D.C. Now, leaving aside how you may feel about some of their demands, which will worry parents, educators, and policymakers fighting for evidence-based practices, but leaving that aside, the SOS movement offers important lessons in deploying social media to achieve social goals. SOS was especially skillful in leveraging Twitter to recruit new members and build community identity around shared frustrations, tweet a barrage of headlines driving traffic to websites and blogs where prolific writers further articulated the cause, sustain ongoing conversation around core talking points, attract the attention of traditional press, focus attention on a call to action, a Washington march that further solidified everything above. Now, not that there weren't major missteps in this movement. The decision not to accept an invitation to meet with Obama kind of strikes me as one. I think after some big initial successes, SOS stumbled into many of the pitfalls that often limit the impact and lifespan of grassroots movements and nonprofits. I also get the impression that much of SOS's energy has migrated over to Diane Ravitch's network for public education. In any case, SOS is a great case study for how to use Twitter and for pitfalls to avoid. So, back to our point, Twitter is a powerful networking social action tool. And mobile media just makes the whole thing faster and more global. Today we covered how Twitter can advance your goals in web strategy, monitoring and messaging, and networking and mobilizing. My apologies, we didn't have time for pedagogy. Again, see my Scoop It page for a few breadcrumbs to help you explore that fourth category, and that URL address is coming up again in a moment. So wrapping up, we looked at social media's why, especially Twitter. Will Twitter save the planet or, barring that, solve the challenges we face in education? Definitely, definitely not. And yes, to be sure, social media has plenty of downsides, some we cannot even glimpse at this early juncture. I don't want to oversell Twitter. Friedrich Hess voiced a relevant caution in his book, The Same Thing Over and Over: How School Reformers Get Stuck in Yesterday's Ideas. He says, the challenge is not to romanticize any given technological advantage, but to ask how it might be used to solve problems in smarter ways. With those important qualifiers underscored, I have no doubt that Twitter can be a power tool for literacy educators and champions. As Guy Kawasaki, author of Enchantment, The Art of Changing Hearts, Minds, and Actions, said, Twitter is the most powerful enchantment tool I've used in my career. Kawasaki is the former chief evangelist of Apple, so that's really saying something. Perhaps enchantment has been a missing ingredient in our decades-long campaign to bring skilled reading instruction to every child. We've tried the levers of research, policy, legislation, and accountability with mixed results. But how well have we practiced the art of enchantment to change hearts, minds, and actions? To recap, Twitter is a powerful social media tool. Like all tools, it has limitations. It is as good or bad as the humans who wield bring change. For enchanting, transforming hearts, minds, and action, and for building grassroots support. Yes, using Twitter requires learning a few tricks and strategies, but it is not rocket science. As Louisa Moats famously said, teaching reading is rocket science. Twitter is low-hanging fruit. Why not pluck it? There's one more reason to consider getting on Twitter. So far, in my relatively brief but intense exploration of social media, I've been struck by the conspicuous absence of most literacy and learning differences experts. We have very little skin in the game, especially on Twitter, and especially among the thought leaders, academics, and researchers. Leaving things to these guys. It's getting better, though. Here's some promotion, actually way back in 2012, about NCLD's launching its tweet chat. It's a little hard to see. I highly recommend this chat, which you can find on Twitter by entering hashtag LDChat in your search field. It runs on Wednesdays at noon. And kudos to NCLD and the 14 other nonprofits behind launching understood.org, an amazing website providing incredible help and resources about learning and attention issues. Watching what they do with social media will be fascinating and probably very innovative. And of course, Decoding Dyslexia really gets it. They've leveraged social media for rapid grassroots growth that was impossible for previous iterations of parent, grassroots advocacy groups. The trick will be for Decoding Dyslexia to sustain their efforts and impact going forward. The lessons of the SOS movement and the Occupy movement might be germane. We're also seeing many other organizations beginning to ramp up their presence on Twitter and other social media, but still, I think we've been pretty slow plucking this low-hanging fruit. One of the reasons I've been doing this presentation for the last few years. We are seeing a number of individuals doing really well on Twitter. I mentioned Dorothy Bishop earlier. She now has over 15,000 followers and demonstrates that individuals, including academics and scholars, can leverage Twitter and other social media to broadcast high-level content. And here's some other individuals who are active on Twitter: Ryan Mesa, Cynthia Hahn, Posey Boggs, Vicky Meyer, Lynn Pollard, and Ellen Steinberg. They shared their Twitter stories with me for my presentation for the 2013 IDA conference, and I'll run through these really quickly. Ryan Mesa tweets out from Hawaii. He is the Chief School Officer and Director of Education for Hawaiian Education Council. He's also the president of the Hawaiian branch of IDA. And he says he's still waiting for a Cleveland sports championship on his Twitter profile. Deep breath, Ryan. He manages two accounts, one at Ryan Mesa and the other for the IDA Hawaii branch. His The Ryan Mesa account had 229 in 2013, and he now has 371. And the IDA branch had 596, and it now has 767. Ryan's been on Twitter since 2010. Why? He has 3 reasons: to expand his own learning, to help share established knowledge and professional wisdom, and to provide resources. Cynthia Coletti-Hahn, who's the CEO of Literate Nation and tweets out from San Francisco, and she's been tweeting for Literate Nation for about 2 years. Literate Nation had 2013 had 1,319 followers. That's pretty respectable. But now, through the efforts of Cynthia, largely, it has 10,000 followers. Cynthia's been on Twitter since 2011. And why? She says because it's a great place to build amazing partnerships, get questions answered, and research information in real time. And by the way, Brittany Coletti, Literate Nation's social media coordinator, now tweets for Literate Nation, and she's doing such a great job. She also manages all our other social media platforms and accounts: YouTube, Pinterest, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google+. Posey Boggs tweets from Anchorage, Alaska. She's the founding president of the Alaska branch of IDA and a board member of Literate Nation. She had 403 followers in 2013 and now has 743. And she's been on Twitter since 2010. Posey says she's on Twitter because by creating Twitter lists, I can target and follow issues and organizations I am passionate about and interact with experts, for example, cognitive neuroscientists in Sydney and Barcelona. Vicki Myers tweets from Washington, D.C. She's an advocate for struggling readers, currently serving in the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education at the U.S. Department of Education. She had 725 followers last year, and she now has 1,202. Vicki's been on Twitter since 2011, and the reason, she says, is to be part of a network advocating for struggling readers and generating solutions, and to stay abreast of trends, what people are thinking. It's research. Lynn Pollard of Dallas, Texas, is a writer, advocate, mom, and parent advocacy manager with NCLD's Understood.org. We just looked at them a moment ago. Last year, she had 1,041 followers on one account, which now has 1,548. She also has another account at about 900 or so. She's been on Twitter since 2012. Why? To build audience, to network with experts, to establish authority and clout. Lynn also reports that being on Twitter led to an opportunity to write an article for the New York Times, Can a Daughter with Dyslexia Learn to Love Words? And that's a great example of how traditional media can sometimes follow social media. And finally, Ellen Steinberg tweets from Denver. Ellen is the immediate past president of the Rocky Mountain branch of IDA, a board member of Literate Nation, the vice president of Literate Nation's advocacy core group, and as you all know, she's playing a major role in convening the boot camp. She had 180 followers in 2013 and now has 292. She's been on Twitter since 2011, and when I asked her why, her first answer was, well, where else can you find out the color of Ashton Kutcher's underwear? And after thinking about it a little bit, she also said, it's the most targeted way to get real-time information and to connect with people on the cutting edge. And of course, both statements are true. The total followers of Ryan, Cynthia, and Brittany for Literate Nation, Posey, Vicki, Lynn, and Ellen is 15,842. And just last year, it was 5,412. Now, I'm sure there's some overlap here, and a lot of this big jump comes from Literate Nation, but still, that's pretty cool. The messaging and engagement of these 6 people is reaching a potential audience of almost 16,000. And that's not counting any other social media platforms they may use. Now, imagine what we could do if we really tried. Imagine what we might accomplish if we launched a coordinated and comprehensive social media campaign of messaging and engagement across organizations and among individuals pursuing aligned missions. I don't think we are quite there yet, and I will leave you with that thought. So, today we focus mainly on Twitter, but the broad concepts apply to other social media. Why do I encourage you to explore Twitter? Simply put, it can be a powerful means to achieve your ends via web strategy, monitoring and messaging, networking and mobilizing, or pedagogy. My goal for this presentation was to inspire and empower you to leverage social media to advance your cause, enhance your work. And if I was successful and you do become versed in Twitter, I hope you will pay it forward and inspire and empower your colleagues. So now it's your turn to act. If you haven't already done so, I hope you will start a Twitter account. If you're already on Twitter but not very active, try following 5 new people a day. Who to follow? Find someone you like and respect and see who they follow. Try a tweet a day. Not sure what to tweet? Go to some hashtags and people in your field and start by retweeting them. Check out Edudemic's Ultimate Twitter Guide for teachers. Also see my SlideShare and Scoop It pages for other guidebooks, or just Google Twitter guides and you'll come across plenty. Here again are those 3 URLs I mentioned earlier in this talk. Finally, as much as I appreciated those social media business books I received, and they did help me get started, I eventually found one much better suited for my needs, which I highly recommend, Social Media for Social Good by Heather Mansfield. The trouble with so many of these social media books is that they get out of date in minutes, but if you buy her book and register on her site, she sends you updates. So just Google Social Media for Social Good or Heather Mansfield and it will get you to all of that. She has a new book out now that's focusing on mobile. Don't forget the bootcamp hashtag is LNBC14. You can continue and expand on the conversations you've been having at the bootcamp on that hashtag. Also, I do hope you'll find me on Twitter at cdcowan. And as you become more versed in social media, I hope you will share the knowledge with colleagues and pay it forward. So thank you. Somehow we escaped the little cat or dog disasters I expected. I hope you all have a spectacular boot camp. Thanks for inviting me to share this information and to be part of it.